Anna, and this is Pilates Mat. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to use a little mini band. So this one comes pre-looped. If you don't have a pre-looped band, a very luxurious pre-looped, you can also just use a regular TheraBand. If you don't have a regular TheraBand, you can also do the exercises without the band. Hello. And a fitness ring is also a good kind of extra strategy. You've got a yoga block, you can do some inner thigh business if you want to throw that in as well. Anything for knee comfort, for head comfort. So if you've got like a towel that you want to roll up or fold, gardening pad's a really great one as well. And I think other than that, some water and probably all the props you need. But we'll get started here. Let's do a little standing mobilization. So we're going to kind of hit some standing leg muscles with the mini band, but we'll start with just an easy rotation. So just a little warm up, finding your breath. So we want all the joints to move, right? Ideally. So you can let your ankles, your knees, your hips, your ribs, shoulder. We're going to play with a little bit of T-spine mobilization today too. So just kind of noticing even in your standing rotation that your eyes really add a lot of extra movement in your twisting. We'll just take one more each way. Just good to kind of notice a little recon mission. How's body moving? How's body feeling? Let's take a couple shoulder rolls. You can bring your feet a little closer together. Just finding a little bit of activation through the middle back. So we're thinking our arms, even though we see our hands out here, our arms start from the source, right? The shoulder blades. So good to like wake up and kind of connect to our back space. Let's reverse this, other direction. And like the more we can mobilize the shoulder blades, usually we can get a little bit more access to that breath in the mid back too, which is really nice. Let's take a little roll down. So on your next shoulder roll, you'll nod your chin, lengthening your spine one vertebrae at a time. See if you can let the crown of your head release to the ground. Maybe even shaking the head no or yes. And then push through the feet and roll all the way back up to standing. Let's add like a nice little arm reach here just to get some space between the ribs and the hips. And we'll do that just 2 more times. So I really tuck my chin. I get a nice little stretch through my upper back. We can tend to hold quite a bit, kind of carry tension in that part of our neck and upper back. I'm just focusing on kind of listening and checking in with the body and checking in with the breath here. On this next one, just kind of notice where the weight is in the feet. If there's a tendency to shift it maybe to the heels, can you bring the weight a little more centered throughout the whole foot? So you're getting full activation kind of all around the hip joint. Last one. Nice little sweep up. We'll take a little side stretch here. So you'll take your right leg, you're going to cross it behind, and you can give yourself some width. So don't feel like you have to kind of tightrope yourself. You can have a little space. Little inner thigh squeeze, and then take your same arm, so right arm as your back leg, and take a nice little side bend. Nice stretch. And we'll just do that one more time with that same setup. Really opening up the armpit, lengthening the shoulder away from the hip. And then we'll cross the other leg behind. And right, I'm kind of thinking inner thighs, just so I've got a little more stability through my center, since we're already kind of throwing in some asymmetry here. Inner thighs and outer hips, which we'll work on the mat. Nice. Lovely. All right, let's make our way down to the mat here. So last little roll down. Well, if you need to do a little knee pad situation, you can either fold your yoga mat or grab your knee pad or your towel. And then let's take a couple nice cat cows. So moving from your pelvis, initiating first, I've got my shoulders stacked over my wrists. Scooping the abs, gazing towards the inner thighs, pushing out of the ground, and then lengthening the spine forward, opening the sits bones. Just 2 more like that. So abs initiating, got a lot of support through the shoulders here. Can the pelvis lead the motion, right? Versus kind of spine doing all of the motion and pelvis staying static. And then we'll add a little side bend. So coming into neutral, I'm going to keep my tail and my head parallel to the ground. And I'm going to take a little side bend. So one side stretches, the other side shortens. gazing towards my tail, keeping the elbows straight. Can you keep the weight even in your hips as you take these little side bends? So the pelvis is going to stay stable, but the ribs will be side bending on the pelvis. And just checking in if the ribs want to start to fall towards the ground. One more each way, using your eyes to get a little bit more out of the side bend. Now we'll add a little rotation. So we'll do this 3 times on each side. I'm going to push out of my right arm. I'm going to sweep my arm forward, and I'm going to look back, and then I'll replace it, switching sides. So pushing out of my supporting arms with the impetus for my twist. And then I'm going to try to look back here. Smooth breath. You can inhale and exhale when it gets a little bit sticky at the end there. This one's tricky to find a lot of movement in. The more you can push out of that supporting arm, it will help you rotate with the shoulder blade sliding towards your spine. Last one here. Nice breath in and out. One last thing on hands and knees. We're gonna do a little bird dog. So you can either extend opposite fingers and toes. The goal is to keep the trunk really stable. Maybe you float, right? You don't have to float if you feel unstable here. You can always just do the tap and hold for a nice breath. So maybe I'm inhaling to reach out. If you prefer an exhale, you're more than welcome to take an exhale instead. Is the supporting hip maybe wanting to dip out to the side? Is the supporting elbow maybe wanting to bend? And just a little check as you're replacing your hands, just making sure that you bring them back under your shoulder each time so you're not making it harder than it needs to be with that extension. And we'll just take one more each way, really opening up the front of the hip, allowing that leg to lift. Last one here. Nice. And then let's cross our ankles. We're gonna sit on our bum here. We'll do a little work. So half roll back to start. So I'm gonna sit up nice and tall on my sits bones. I can always move my feet out a little if that gives me more space, or I could also sit up on a cushion. And we're just gonna start with rotating the pelvis away from the thighs and then curling back forward. So the very beginning of our roll down, right, is my pelvis being able to rotate. My hip flexors have to release, and then I'm just gonna flex at the spine to load myself forward. I could always let go, or maybe do hands on my shoulders to add a little bit more load. And then just be mindful, I know I wore this really baggy shirt today so that you could see nothing, but notice if you're arching through the back to come up. If you can keep yourself flexed, you're gonna let the back stay nice and easy, so it's a little bit more ab work, but we're just stacking the ribs over and rolling up. Nice, yeah. Nice and even through both sides. We'll just do 2 more like this, just kind of working that pelvic motion. 1 more here. Okay, so we'll take it all the way down. So nice and slow here, breathing. If you need to make any adjustments on your mat, you're gonna pull your feet in a little closer. We'll go heels in line with the sits bones, and we're just gonna take a couple, basically the same motion, right? Our hip roll. So we're gonna roll using the abs versus smashing the back. You're gonna roll and just let the hips lift. So we're going for a nice little stretch through the front of the hips here, and then melting through, kind of like someone was placing one vertebrae at a time down onto the mat. If you want, you can float your arms up to the ceiling. Nice way to keep the shoulder tension kind of at bay. Also some good feedback of stability from side to side. Yeah, so here's where our core initiates, just like that half roll back. And then I simply peel the spine up. We're just gonna watch we don't go too high in the ribs, so it puts a little bit of extra pressure on that neck, which we want to avoid. Just one more like this here. And then gently rolling the spine back down. Nice. Okay, we're gonna roll to the side. You can pick which side works for you based on kind of your visual situation. And we're gonna do a little rib rotation. So regular spine twist. Now you can have your arms forward. You can also have arm under head. So do what feels best for you. My knees are gonna stay stacked. So I'm taking my top arm And I'm gonna actually kind of hug my rib cage, and I'm gonna keep my knees in the same place. So knees aren't gonna move. I'm gonna gently start to work using my arm, my ribs open to the ceiling. And I can breathe as many breaths as I need. My goal is eventually to get my rib cage completely rotated to the ceiling and my shoulder blades completely flat so that I can unfurl that top arm. And you can see I'm not quite there yet. I'm a little tight, but this would be our eventual goal. And once you've kind of gotten as far as you can for say 3 rotations, you can open that arm out, maybe gaze towards that hand, take a nice breath in here, and then just gently dragging the arm all the way back to the starting position. And we'll do this 3 more times. So we're essentially just giving ourselves a little extra assistance, kind of finding that rib cage rolling open and trying as much as we can to resist the knees opening. And I'm gonna have you guys do this 2 more times, but I'll just kind of show, seated. If we're just opening the shoulder, right, there's a lot of restriction that can happen. So we want the spine all the way from the base to be able to rotate. So the more you can get the ribs to rotate first, it's going to facilitate a lot more opening in the upper body. When you get to that last one, no rush here. Take this last set with you. Breath is your friend. Breath is definitely going to assist. You can sweep that arm open. Maybe you're a little bit more open than you were when you started, or maybe you just have some good info, which is always nice. You're gonna gently let your knees come back up to the ceiling. So we're lying on our back. Walk your feet a little bit wider and take a couple easy windshield wipers, letting your thighs turn in and out. This is good info too, right? We want our thighs to move separately from our pelvis so that they're not glued together. And then just gently on this next one, you're gonna roll all the way over to the other side. Whatever is most comfortable for that head. So you could do long arm, bent, or out front if that feels okay. Take your top hand and then gently, without letting the knees pull open, you're gonna start to rotate. A little hug here at the ribs, starting to rotate the ribs to the ceiling and then unfurling that arm. Big breath into the side body, right? Super tight lats, super tight pecs. All of those can be components here. If this is a movement that you just don't do very often, that could also be a piece. Maybe turning the head, if it doesn't feel comfortable on the neck, maybe you just haven't facilitated enough rotation. So feel free to keep the head to the ceiling. We'll do this 2 more times. Can you melt your ribs as you rotate? So kind of softening. If the ribs want to brace, use your breath. Dragging that arm back. You've got 1 more here. And lengthening that arm out. Nice, enjoy this last full cycle of breath here in this twist. Noticing any differences or similarities from side to side. And then just gently bending those legs. We're gonna come back to lying on our back here. You can gently hug your legs into your chest and take just a couple little circles in your sacrum. We'll go for about 5 each direction. Just kind of noticing how that feels. You're able to access any more rotation at the end. And we'll carefully place those legs back down. So we'll get the core going a bit here. So coming into your imprint position, so this is our flat back position, right? We're going to use our obliques to draw our ribs and our hips together, gently rotating that pubic bone towards our chest. We're going to float one leg to tabletop and just kind of test it out. If the ribs popped, abs popped, back popped, we just want to refresh that core work and lower the leg down. Exhaling, trying the opposite side here. Now, if this is where you want to stay, you can stick with just that leg lift march motion, making sure that you can keep the abs engaged. If you want to turn it up a little, float one leg to tabletop, float your second leg to meet it, and then you'll take your toe taps here. So now the challenge is a little more focused on the lower versus the lift. It's okay if your toe doesn't actually touch the ground. It's all about your thigh moving away from center, right? So as the thigh moves, does my mid back extend? So maybe hands on ribs, tactile cues can be really nice. Arms to the ceiling, again, if you know your shoulders like to get involved, can be really nice. If you want more of a challenge, some options would be to tap a little bit further away, or maybe reach your arms to a hover by your ears, right? So now I'm just extending the lever, a little bit more challenge in the core, exhaling as I tap. How's that supporting leg? Does it feel pretty stable, or is it kind of wandering off? That could definitely make it a little harder in your abs if your supporting leg's doing something funky. Try 4 more here, just turning up the heat a bit. Nice, you guys. Okay, keep your legs in tabletop. Always option to lower. You're gonna reach your hands behind your head. So wrap those elbows so you can see them just out of the corner of your eyes. We're gonna exhale to curl up and then lengthen and lower back down. Yeah, just a nice, easy ab prep here. Fun bonus to make this more exciting is if you curl up in 1 count, try lengthening down in 2 counts, so that you're creating a little more work on the eccentric. So we know we build strength 3 ways, right? Concentric, eccentrically, and isometrically. And eccentric's actually harder, and it's a better way to build strength than concentric, which kind of counterintuitive, but we got 3 more here. Exhaling to lift, lengthening down, using your breath, supporting your head with your mid back. Last one here. Nice, then you can carefully lower 1 leg and lower your second leg. We'll come into a little march, so just setting up those feet in line with the sits bones again, right? A little further away can be nicer on the knees, but it will be more hamstring. We're gonna take a roll up to set. Now what I wanna do is stabilize through my core, so there's no shifting or side bending. I'm gonna push through my left foot, and I'm gonna float my right leg to tabletop. If you're not ready for a full lift, you could also just lift your heel. We're gonna go from side to side, just alternating. Same hip crease, so really nice crease through the hip. Think of pushing through your supporting leg as the impetus to lift your working leg. So here's where we get the word march. You can literally think of this as like kind of a marching quality, marching texture. Maybe elbows for a little less support, maybe arms to the ceiling again. Can you open up the front of the hip even as you get fatigued here? And just check in with the ribs. We'll go for 4 more like this. Smooth breath, last 2. When you finish your last one, you can reach your arms all the way overhead. Just relax them on the ground and melt your spine down the mat. And we'll lengthen our legs out here. We're gonna take a couple full roll-ups. If you're working on your roll-up, you can always opt for bent legs, and I'll kind of demo that version where you can grab and roll up, or if you know your back prefers bent legs, you can opt for bent. Otherwise, we're gonna go straight legs, nice arms overhead. We're gonna sweep the arms to the ceiling. As they pass, here's your exhale, rolling all the way up. Feel free to go for a nice little hamstring stretch if that feels good, or a spine stretch by dropping your head. And we'll roll back down. We'll just do 5 more like this. Sweeping the arms over, find space between your ribs and your hips. Inhaling and exhaling. Yeah, nice. And you guys all have lovely roll-ups, so you can torture yourself by going as slow as possible in both directions. It's a good way to build strength. Seeing if you can flip your pelvis first. If you want to make it a little harder, you could try bringing your arms to your shoulders. So we're kind of getting rid of that assistance with the lever and just weighting ourselves a little bit more. Or arms by ears is also a really nice option to make it a little bit harder. Letting those thighs really reach away. Exhaling, nodding the chin. Yeah, it's fun how it gets a little more tired faster, right, when we take away the arms. So 1 more full roll up and roll down. And then we'll add our little band. On this next one, you can roll all the way down, take a nice little starfish stretch. Fingers and toes reaching away from each other. We'll grab our looped band, or if you have a regular TheraBand and you want to tie it, You can also do this without the band. So many options. So I'm gonna put the band on just above my knees. If you find you press out a lot, if you have a smaller band, you could also put it just below the knees if that's helpful. So just to find our muscles here, the ones that we want to activate, you're going to lie on your back and then check in with where your pelvis is. So we want to be in a neutral. So if you notice you're a little bit tucked, see if you can relax the sits bones and untuck. And then I'm going to have my hands to the outside edge of my hips. So right where my thighs come into my hip sockets, and I'm going to press out. And then I'm going to resist back in. Just want to make sure there's some movement happening here. Again, with that kind of eccentric, there'll be like a crease as you press out, kind of where a swimsuit line would be. With that eccentric piece, it's easy to let the band win if your band is quite strong as well. So see if you can resist. If you press out in one count, can you resist and stay neutral in your pelvis for maybe 2 or 3 counts? So you're just conscientiously going a little bit slower on the return, keeping that neutral pelvis. Okay, well, take this into a bridge. So prepping your feet, just making sure that you've got a good base. You're gonna lift your hips into the sky here. So a little outer pressure on the band. We're gonna take some butterflies up here. So same thing, you can have your hands kind of right at that hip joint. Should be even more obvious where that crease is happening. We just wanna keep an eye on the mid-back. Hips are staying really square. Yep, arms up is an awesome option. Arms on body, keeping track of ribs. Do we feel that crease on the side of the hips? And it's okay that your feet move, right? So our feet will follow generally our hip joint. So it's okay if they're rolling. Don't feel like you're doing it wrong. Yeah, and if we're tucked, we're not gonna get as much motion. So this is a good one to play with for if you know you like to tuck a lot, getting that neutral pelvis position. And then on the next one, just keep a little pressure out. You're gonna roll all the way back down. Okay, so we kind of found those muscles. So now we'll turn to our side. And again, whichever side for visual ease. We're gonna go we'll do head all the way down, but just kind of check out your legs for a second. We're not gonna do a really intense clamshell. And part of that's because we don't want this to work a ton. It's not super functional. We're gonna do a lengthened kind of mermaid clamshell. And then give yourself a little check. So if your pelvis is already tucked, right, we're gonna favor this guy a little bit more, kind of front of pocket. So lengthen the sits bones away, and then give yourself a little extra length. You might notice the bottom side lifts a bit or lightens. So you want that oblique to help assist to keep the hip down. And then find your hand in that same place. So this is where I'm lifting from versus waist. And I'm just gonna float that leg up, the whole thing. You can stay a little bit bent, foot can totally be relaxed. And there's my nice little side crease. So you could do this without the band. The fun thing about the band is your bottom hip is working a little bit more already, which is nice. You might find the second side's a little more tired. Yeah, nice. And you're just breathing and taking a little kind of checklist, kind of refreshing. How's neck? Right, is my oblique supporting me on that bottom side? We feel some hip work? Excellent. So on the next one, we'll pause. And we'll pause just into the resistance, so like hip height. We're just gonna do internal rotation. So I'm gonna turn my knee in and my foot up, and then back to neutral. So we're not gonna do external rotation. So I'm really pushing into the band, knee down, foot up. Feel free to go a little slower if internal rotation and the brain are like, what? It's fine. This one takes a little longer sometimes on one side to find. So you have to really allow the movement to come all the way from the hip joint here. We feel that fun spice. And then on this next one, you're gonna stay in internal rotation from your hip. So watch it's not the knee, little pulses, woo, from the hip. Yeah, still breathing? Any air is good. Go for 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax. Yeah, I know. Don't worry, I suffered with you too. Good work. That one's spicy. So you can totally roll to the other side. I'm going to do like a full 360 just so we have the video in view. So kind of same checklist here. So legs a little further away and then pelvic check first. So to set up for the best position, we just want to make sure we're neutral and that our bottom side isn't kind of sinking. We definitely don't have to brace in the ribs, but just a little awareness. And then start with hand in that same spot and just try floating up. Yeah, right? It's like, ooh, that side was working also. Now you can tell. So internal rotation is really important though to stabilize the hip, and we tend to do a lot of external rotation, right? Just even in normal movement, we're not usually in internal rotation very often. And just breathing. Yeah, if the ribs like to brace, which, you know, they do like to do that for us sometimes, just keeping the ribs melted as you lift and lower. Got all this nice real estate in your back of your ribs. Okay, on this next one, we're gonna float. So again, just hip height, you just need to go into tension. You can always get rid of the band if you need. Try that internal rotation and then just back to neutral. And right where that hand is, you can kind of feel like, oh yeah, I've got to allow movement here. And I think an interesting thing to think about is when the rest of our body does a lot of like moving, it's usually to try to avoid moving from the place maybe we're asking it to move. And sometimes it's just because we don't know how to move it, but notice if like other parts of the body start to kind of freak out. Like just focus your mind on that rotation. Okay, stay here, little pulses up from the hip. So just make sure it's not the foot, nice and relaxed, not just the knee bending. Yeah, we'll go for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then, nice work. Yeah, you'll remember me later today, right? So you can carefully come back onto your back here. And we'll take that band off. Pass that guy off to the side. And then we'll do a little bit more ab work. So we'll start with a little oblique combo here. So I'm gonna take my right hand to support my head. Now I could alter the legs a little bit. So if I wanna keep my legs down, I could. The OG version, I'm in imprint and I'm gonna float my left leg to tabletop. I'm gonna take my left hand and press into my left thigh. My left thigh presses back into my hand. So even though it's hand and thigh pressing, have your abs be the piece that's creating the pressure. So I'm in my imprint and I should start to feel my obliques turn on as I hold this isometric press. So when I exhale, I'm gonna curl into a crunch, supporting my head and lengthen and lower back down. And can you keep that tension through the whole left side as you do the crunch? So usually we'll kind of keep the tension and then we might start to lose it a little bit on the way down. So kind of refresh that. And if you want to make this a little harder, you can bring your right leg up. You could bring it to tabletop or you could bring it out. So just adding a little bit of work. Obviously, the lower it is, the more exciting. So be mindful of what's going on in the back and the neck, right? If you want to make it a little more exciting still, for the last 5 we're going to do, you can curl in and bend the right leg to tabletop. And then as you lengthen out, so now we're adding a little more challenge to eccentric. We're just going to do 4 more like that. Are the hips stable? And do you feel like you can still keep that oblique isometric hold on the left side? Yeah, 2 more. Exhaling to nod the chin. Can take a peek at those hips. 1 more here. And then just carefully exiting, right? Being mindful when we exit here. So we'll do like a little ab break in between, right? Ab intermission. So we'll do a bicycle. Bicycle have 2 options. You get, well, 3, I guess there's lots of options. You can keep your head down or you can bring your head up. So that's the first option. Option 2 is if you want more of a stretchy version, you're welcome to pull the thigh in. If you want more of a work version, you're gonna press the thigh away. We're in imprint either way. So I'm gonna start with my legs in tabletop. If you're gonna come up, you can exhale and lift the head and shoulders. And then we're just gonna take 10 sets. So inhaling and exhaling to switch. Nice. For 9, you can pull if you want a little more of a hip flexor stretch. Nice. For 7, really reach that opposite leg away. If you're going for the stretch version, you got 5 more. For 4, right lower is going to be a little more glute, higher, a little more hip flexor. And you got 2 more. Keep the hips really stable. Here's your oblique work, anti-rotation, last one. And then you can hug your legs into your chest. And then just take a little rock from side to side. Yeah, so lots of all your oblique stuff is anti-rotation, anti-side bending, so secret obliques. Maybe not so secret. So we'll go to the other side of our first exercise. So again, you could do both legs down. I'm gonna start with left hand behind my head, right hand and right thigh, my right leg's in tabletop. And I'm first just gonna find that isometric work through my core. So I'm in imprint. My core is actively engaged. As I exhale, lift the head and shoulders, lengthening down. Can I keep my hips even and stable? Right, and especially when we're doing a lot of like crunches, that neck tension can build up. So making sure you nod your chin before you lift so that our crunch is really coming from our ribs, flexing, right, the waist versus the chin, which can get a little carried away. If you want to make this harder, left leg could be in tabletop or out on the diagonal at any height. So definitely adding a little more load on the abs. Still breathing. If you want to make this more exciting for your last 5, you're going to pull the left leg in as you crunch to tabletop. And as you lower, you'll lengthen that leg away. We want our abs to work when we're lengthened and extended, not just when we're crunching and flexing. So it's a good little reminder here. You got 2 more. Really functional to have those abs working on stretch. Last one. And then carefully lowering one leg and your second leg. Walk your feet out a little wider and just take a little windshield wiper here. Nice. So we'll go into a little one leg circle. You can use your looped band for this, a little stretch beforehand if you would like. If you don't have a looped band, you can also just thread your hands behind your thigh. We're just gonna do some little knee pumps to get some length here. My supporting leg can be bent or long. If you have your looped band and wanna play with that, you can put it over the arch of your foot, and then you can create a little bit of tension here. Pulling, whether you like under cling or hands over, go with like your preferred position here. And just letting the hip crease, the foot extend, heel to the ceiling. We're just gonna do a couple knee pumps in and out of this. And then we'll take that band away or unthread your fingers. Okay, so we found some length through this line. So we're gonna try to really keep a neutral position in our pelvis. Your left leg can be long or bent. So 2 options, a little bit more supportive with the bent. If you're gonna keep it long, flex your foot and really kick your quad on. So you're getting some nice glute outer hip. Arms can be down or up. Leg can be bent or extended. So go with what you have a neutral position in your pelvis. So maybe it's not full straight. That's totally fine. We're gonna start by crossing the midline on an inhale, and then we're gonna exhale as that leg reaches out to the side and around. We're just gonna do 5 more like this. Here's your oblique work. So the more you can work your supporting hip, right, really activate through that supporting leg, the less likely you are to barn door out to the side. And we can keep the circle a little smaller, a little bit slower. Got 1 more here. Pause at the top. We're gonna reverse that. Inhaling to reach the leg away. Exhaling to come back in. right? Your thighs just sitting in that socket, nice and heavy. So it's just able to circle. Here's that femur moving separately from pelvis idea. One more here. Nice, and you can bend that leg, pull that knee into your chest. So we'll take this into a twist. So that leg's gonna cross all the way over. I can use my opposite hand to keep the thigh down and then sweep your top arm open, unfurl. We'll take about 3 rounds of breath here, just trying to find some breath into that space between the ribs and the hips. Breathing into the armpit, noticing if we like to really kind of crunch down in the lats, can we open them up with some air? Let that fascia be hydrated. And with your exhale, just get a little less tense. And then just gently bending that leg, rolling back onto our back here. We're gonna take our knee pumps on the other side. So threading the hands, if you don't have a band, if you wanna play with your looped band or your long TheraBand, you can pop your foot in that guy. Supporting leg can be long or bent. And we're just going for just easy bend at the hip and knee, really reaching through that heel. Gonna find a little bit of active length so that we can use it in our circles. Really nice stretch if you ever have sciatica stuff. This is a great one, especially when the foot is flexed for the nerve stretch. If you're just going for hammies, you could point your foot to. Try 2 more like this. Let that open. If you've got your bottom leg long, really let that hip just open. We'll take our band away or unthread our hands. 2 choices, right? Bent or long. Just make sure that your quad is on, your hip is on when we go for our leg circles. You can have your arms down for more support, up. Love hands on body. We're gonna cross the midline first. Inhaling and exhaling as we sweep out and around. Something to notice as you take these next 5, do the ribs kind of feel like they're evenly weighted, or do you notice that the ribs weight a little bit more towards the leg that's moving? So kind of finding that opposite oblique just a little bit more can really give you some good assistance. Staying heavy through that supporting side. On this next one, we'll pause, recenter here, inhaling and exhaling to reverse it. Hands on hips is a really nice piece of feedback if you know you like to hike a little bit. Just want to be able to move our legs freely without the rest of our body coming with us, right? Last one here. Exhale through that moment where the leg's the furthest away for a little extra support. You can bend that leg, give it a little squeeze, nice little hug here. And then we'll take this leg across the body. For a twist, you can always use your opposite hand and then open up in the other direction. So here's your ribs rotating, shoulder blade. If you think of your ribs first, you might find you actually get a little deeper rotation. And we'll take about 3 breaths. Inhaling, filling some space that feels maybe a little hard to access, and then exhaling and relaxing, sinking a little bit more into the position. We can hydrate our fascia with our breath, which is pretty cool. So using your breath as hydration. And then we'll sweep the arm all the way around, and we're gonna roll onto our front. I learned a fun fact. Most people are have less rotation on their left side. And they twist to the left. Probably because most of us are right-handed, I would imagine, is probably where that data comes from. So we'll do a little extension. We're gonna do a classic. So hands, don't feel like you have to be squished by your mat. They can be a little bit wider so your shoulders feel easy. About shoulder rib distance, you're gonna press down gently through the tops of the feet so that the front of the hip can be open and you've got a little glute and hamstring. We're gonna lift the shoulder blades first. So my abs are on, shoulder blades lift up. And then I'm gonna lengthen my sternum forward, head kind of undulates up last, and then we'll come back down in the same order. So we're gonna try shoulder blades first versus like eyes and head. We get a little bit more kind of ease and fluidity when we start from allowing the shoulder blades to retract. Now, if you wanna make this more exciting, right, some options, you can always float the hands at the top and then lower down. So here's that eccentric, building strength by having to support the lengthen. You could also just keep the hands off the whole time. So having those arms, right, shoulder blades are already up, but I'm just adding a little load. Of course, this is back work, right? So if you feel it in your back. However, if you feel like it's just low back kind of goes down and takes the whole load, then bring your hands back down so that you can keep the work even. Glutes and abs, but glutes especially are super big helpers for extension. So if you want to improve your extension, right, not just spinal mobility, which we definitely need, got to get a bum. So bum and extension. And then take a little rest here. You can rest your forehead on your hands, bend your knees, and just take a little windshield wiper. And we'll work the bum here for a moment. So you can have your legs in external rotation. So you can walk your legs out like mat-ish, shoulder-ish distance, and then flex your feet like a frog leg position. So all we're gonna do is squeeze the heels, and we're just gonna see if we can find our bum. So just by squeezing your heels, do your glutes turn on. Right, and we wanna make sure it's not a tuck. We wanna make sure we're not just kind of slamming our pubic bone into the ground. It should feel like we can just squeeze the heels and the bum kind of gently engages. So stick with this if this feels like this is where you wanna stay. If you're ready for the next level, you're gonna squeeze and try to float the knees off. Right? Think of direction of movement. So if I'm moving to the ceiling, lying down on my stomach, my glutes and hamstrings are responsible for extension versus my hip flexors. I was thinking of that like, not Leonardo DiCaprio, Leonardo da Vinci, you know, the man in the wheel. Whatever movement's moving in front, you wanna think, okay, like front of my body will be moving, will be like leading that movement. If it's moving to the back of the body is gonna do the work. So we just wanna get that posterior chain on here. Okay, so we felt some bum and some hammies. You can lengthen your legs out. We're gonna come back to resting just one cheek on the ground. We're gonna float the arms up and we're gonna rotate the palms to the hips. So it's my shoulder blades that are leading this, right? I'm retracting. I'm kind of like wrapping open. Yeah, really nice. And then with my glutes that I just worked, I'm gonna do a little hover. Nice breath in. And then exhale, just let your cheek rest on the ground. And we'll switch sides here. So kind of in that step, shoulder blades, glutes, nice breath in, hover, and lower back down. And it should feel pretty comfortable. We're definitely not going for like a height award here, but really length. It should feel pretty supported because we've got our middle back working for us. Core is definitely on. Inhale is nice because we're moving kind of the same way our diaphragm would be. If it doesn't feel comfortable, you like that exhale for extra support, then feel free to switch that breath. Let's just do one more here, checking in with the neck. And then we'll come all the way down. You can use your arms to find your core here too, and press back to take a child's pose. Just so we're getting a little counter in that back. For a child's pose, knees together can be really nice for low back. If you want more of a hip opener, you can always walk the knees out a little bit wider. And we'll take a side stretch in this. So we'll bring the hands over to the right. And then you can just gently, and if you need more support for the head, you can always use that bottom arm or bottom hand. Gently let the hips fall in the opposite direction for a bigger stretch. So you certainly don't have to if you're already getting a big stretch here. And just breathing. And then gently walk those hands over to the other side. And if you're already getting a big stretch, right, you don't have to, but if you want a little extra, you can let the hip fall out. And then let's go to the center for just one more breath in the middle here. See if you can really relax the back of the neck. And then walking those hands back. Nice. All right, we'll come back to hands and knees, and we'll do a little side-to-side bird dog here. So instead of our contralateral, we're going to do same side. So for this one, I'm going to start by pushing so strongly out of my left arm. And I'm pushing, 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 pushing. And it's that this arm just now no longer needs to connect to the ground versus a lift, right? So this arm is not lifting, but it's actually just kind of dragging because I'm pushing so much out of it. So that's kind of the feeling that we want. And just try one or two of those on each side where you're pushing, it's super grounded, and you're pushing so much, this wrist kind of spiraling up through the shoulder, supporting underneath. Once you have that concept, you can start to take it into the hip. So now I'm pushing so much that also this knee just happens to come up off the ground. And it's obviously a lot more stabilizing on the supporting side, right? When I start to ask this hip to do a little bit more. Maybe the foot can lift. Can you do this without collapsing down, right? So the lift sometimes becomes a little easier and then we crash a little bit. So you still have to press just as much out of supporting hip and arm when you lower back down. So yeah, your full float, lots of bum here. There's your supporting glute we worked. So you can probably feel it activating a bit. And if you want a little more, take that full side rotation. You can also sweep arm and leg away from each other. So we're adding a little load. And they don't have to be like perfectly shaped in any specific way, but the idea of the intention is supporting limbs, supporting limbs, supporting limbs. Right, here's my shoulder blade rotating so that my chest can be open. And then can I keep all of that on as I lower back down? It's like a ton of work, right? Isn't that nuts? And it's easy to cheat it, right? Because in our heads, a lot of times we think, okay, we're gonna mimic a shape because that's so much of movement. So we just kind of like limbs out and it's like, okay, but what if this side doesn't get to lead? Changing the intention, which is like the coolest thing about Pilates, I think. It's like, what's the intention versus what does it look like? And it's like, wow, I feel my glute after that band work. I don't know about you guys. It's like shaking on one side in particular. Yeah, and if you can keep your brain in the shoulder, really growing out of the wrist and in that outer hip. And then after this, even yourself out, once you finish this last one, we'll just take a quick little child's pose off the wrist for a moment. Nice work, you guys. If you want to turn your palms, you can rotate your palms up. That can be a nice little shoulder stretch variation. It's pretty spicy. Gently just walking the hands back and we'll roll the spine up. We'll do a little bit more core here. Little teaser excitement. So if you're not doing teaser, you could always just go back to your half roll back legs, right? Still a good strategy, still lots of core work. So we'll do hands behind the thighs to start. And we'll roll it back. So we want to keep, right, it's not our boat pose, but we want to keep the pelvis in a C curve. So if holding this is already work, maybe all we're going to do is start floating a leg up and just kind of seeing like, you know, can we float here? And then if we're like, okay, yeah, we can, this is okay, then you can bring both legs up. Now I can use the backs of my legs against my arms to help support, especially if hip flexors immediately are like, and kind of like lock down. You can find your glutes and your abs a little more and relax those. You're working super deep hip. Maybe you can let go, right? And this is like super deep psoas, deep hip, right? If you want more, extending the leg, a little more superficial there. Relax the shoulders, right? You can, reaching the arms up or out is a great way to challenge just a little bit more. We're just gonna hold for like 3 more breaths, right? Isometric, the best way to build strength. So it's like your plank. It's a really mean plank. And then just gently relaxing here. Nice, we'll counter that with a reverse. So reverse table, or it would be two options. So we can either take with hands rotated out, so we're getting nice external rotation. We can either take a reverse table, or we can extend the legs. For this one, go like slight turnout if you're gonna do this, just because it's a little nicer in the knees. You can squeeze your inner thighs together and you can lift here. So you have two options, right? If your knees don't like this one, like if you feel like there's a lot of tension in the back of the knees, I would just opt for your bent leg position. I'm just gonna take like 2 breaths up here. And then gently lower back down. Okay, teaser round 2, more excitement. So for this one, we're gonna do a little bit of a roll down. So options would be, I'm gonna roll back just to my floating ribs, and then I'm gonna come back up. And I can use my arms as much as I need. We just wanna watch out for like, kind of popping up, yeah? Or, and you could do this without arms, right? Or you can roll all the way down, arms or no arms, and come all the way up. Yeah, and I'm allowing myself, if I need, so if this feels like back is precarious, allow yourself to pull your thighs in at the bottom and then roll it up. And now it's like, wow, rolling like a ball is gonna feel like a breeze, because this is so much harder than rolling like a ball. Yeah, nice, you guys. And I didn't tell you how many we're gonna do. We're just gonna do 10 more minutes. No, I'm just kidding. Let's go for just 3 more of your variation. Nice, and I've got 2 more just so you know, but feel free to be done sooner if you are. It's like there's some deep core, eh? Deep core, deep hip. Nice, you guys. And then rest for a moment. We'll do 1 more little reverse just to kind of counter. Shoulder bridge is always a great option too if the arms need a break. Either bent or long. We're just gonna stay up for 3 breaths. I'm gonna mix it up just so that we've got both options. So this one's definitely more work in your inner thighs. If you're going straight legs, squeeze your inner thighs together. When you finish your 3 breaths, you're gonna exit just as slowly as you entered. Lovely. Yeah, and then walk your feet out a little bit wider. And let's do a windshield wiper here. So usually feet a little further is a little easier. You can always have hands back if you need, right? How's the internal, external rotation here? Just kind of examining. And remember, it's from the hips. So if knees get tweaky at all, check in, right? Body can turn if it needs to, but just check in with allowing that hip to mobilize. We're gonna hit the glute just 1 more time. Gonna do these really fun guys here. So next time your left leg's in front, your right leg's back. Back to the mat here. We're gonna do some floats. So we're gonna float this back leg. You can use your hands, but eventually, maybe you don't use your hands, and maybe your torso doesn't even move, which obviously mine's moving a little bit. It's a dream I'm still working towards, but just try a little float, and we'll go for about 6 of these. Does that whole leg, do we feel that glute again? Memories of the band. When you finished your 6, same thing, so you could be hands down, hands up. Can you internally rotate this leg and lift your foot? So just the foot, and it's again all the way, and maybe like a hand there to remind if that's helpful. Like, where is this movement coming from? Just 6. And if you don't do these very often, it might cramp right away, right? Because body's like, what do I use to do this? I'll turn everything on, which is a good strategy for a cramp. And then when you finish that last one, lengthen that leg out. You can turn it out. So now we're in like a little kind of turned out position here. And we're just gonna take a nice little side stretch. So rotating my chest towards my knee. I'm just gonna take a nice big sweep up and over. And we'll do 2 more like that, trying to keep this hip weighted. So the rib cage is staying relatively stacked over the hips. versus shifting. Shifting may not feel super good in the back. We're just thinking like, can you spin that armpit open? Really stretch that lat. Nice. And then a little hamstring stretch. You can rotate towards your straight foot, straight leg. And then just take a nice little, so right, spine stretch is when my spine's flexed. Hip stretch is when my pelvis is tilting. So if you're going for more hamstring, think of sticking your sit bone out. If you want more of a spine stretch, think of relaxing the top of your head down. So that's going to just kind of mix it up. And you can always combine them, but just knowing kind of what you're going for. Then sweep your legs around to the other side for side 2 of your float. So you can use hands, right? That's totally fine. We'll take 6 lifts. You might find that the sides are wildly different. You still feel your glute. And just relaxing the foot as much as you can. Once you've done your 6, same deal, turning in. So I'm trying to lift my foot from my hip. I don't know if you guys did, this is my left side. Terrible. Like talking to Pluto. In a different solar system. Halfway here. How's the breath? How's the back? How are the ribs? When you finish your 6, oh, nice. You can lengthen that leg out. Rotate that leg into a little external rotation. We'll take that side bend. So I'm going to rotate my chest over my bent leg. And then nice big sweep up and over. And we'll just do 2 more like that. Feel free to let the ear drop if that feels okay. Last one, letting the armpit open up towards the ceiling. And then we'll rotate towards the straight leg. And then again, kind of, if you want more hamstring, you don't have to go very far. If you want hamstring, you're just going to think of lengthening your sit bone. If you want a little more of a spine stretch, you can drop the top of the head towards the knee. I mean, combo is always an option. And then for our last little thing, we'll do some cat-cows with butterfly. So you can bring your feet together. You can choose your depth. And I'll show this from the side. So I'm holding on to like ankles, feet, what's most comfortable. I'm going to roll back off my sits bones and I'm kind of just like hanging in my shoulder blades. So I'm getting a little stretch, nice little protraction stretch through my blades. And then I'm going to, with my arms as well, roll back to neutral and then lift my sternum to where the wall and the ceiling meet. A little retraction stretch here. It's like your cat-cow. And we'll do 2 more like that. Just rounding back, easy breath, tucking the chin. And then gently extending forward. Nice breath in. And 1 more. Just noticing that that retraction can be really gentle. So it's not the ribs, but just a little lift in the sternum as the shoulder blades draw together. And I'll leave you guys there. Nice work. Yeah, thank you so much.